Welcome back, everyone. I am Zell, and today it's time to take an in-depth look at the WE 702. So strap in, buckle down. This one's going to be a good one, and get it double if you're drinking something. We already did an overview of the WE 702, but the reason we're going back and revisiting this is because I took this knife from the first run of 702s, and I have carried it like I would carry any other knife. And some of you are saying, well, oh, that's no big deal. Well, yeah, it is. Because I carry knives in two different highly abrasive environments. Whenever I carry in the shop, I generally carry this knife. One, because it's a good, comfortable cutter. It will take care of a lot of things. And I do have some knives I've made up there now, and I keep a Dragonfly up there. Same reasons, though. The Dragonfly's FRN, this one's FRCP, and the Dragonfly's ZDPA 189, this one's S110V. And I do that because, well, just get a look at this knife. I don't know if you can see all the dust, dirt, ick, and crap that's down in that FRCP, but it's pretty full. I really need to get a toothbrush out and clean this guy up at both sides. But because of the hardness of the blade and the abrasion resistance, the blade still looks pretty good, even though I carry it in those places. If I carry a standard knife that's got an aluminum handle or a titanium handle with some sort of anodization, not anodization, but some sort of coating on it, they become just plain aluminum-looking knives or plain titanium-looking knives over a matter of a few months, generally. And that's because in the knife shop, you've got metal dust, you've got wood dust, you've got all sorts of different dust floating around. And, you know, if the knife's in your pocket and you're grinding another blade, you've got stuff coming, especially if you're doing a hollow grind or using a large contact wheel, you've got dust coming off that wheel right at your pockets. And it's just nasty for a knife. So that's why it makes a difference that I carried the knife like I would carry this knife. Not every day, because I had other knives to test, but this has been the most regularly carried knife over the past several months, because I really wanted to take this knife and put it in a place that most people won't, because of the price, because of, you know, the lack of availability. And, you know, it's a $300 knife, $350 MSRP, and it hasn't been readily available. And I know this, there's a lot of people out there looking for these knives, waiting for WE to make another run of them. And from what I understand, they're going to make another run soon. But the next run will have some slight differences. It should be differences for the better. I haven't seen them all yet, but from what I understand, they're minor upgrades that most people aren't even going to notice. So let's get into this knife and how it's done. With the 702, we get a closed length of just under 5 inches, a thickness of about 0.58 inches, which is a little thick, but it carries really well, and a closed height, which is beautiful, of 1.116. So it is kind of in that Quaken-ish category, which is a beautiful thing. Makes for a great carrying knife, especially with the nearly 3.9-inch blade. It's like 3.86 by my measurements. And let's get some comparison out of the way right quick. I know we've already done this once, but we'll do it again. We have a Rat Model 1, our Buck 110. It's heavier than the Rat and has more blade, lighter than the Buck and has more blade. Not a lot lighter than the Buck, though. Actually, yeah, I think it's an ounce or so lighter than the Buck, and about an ounce heavier than the Rat. And we'll throw up a Spyderco Delica and a small Sebenza 21 for small knives. So it is a good-sized knife. And while we've got that blade out there, let's get a look at it. And what we get with the blade is a nice slab of M390 with their hand-rubbed satin finish. And this is a good testament to how well they do that hand rub satin. I have used the crap out of this knife, and you know, get a look at that, guys. It is still looking good. And whenever I say I used the crap out of it, I've used it enough that I have sharpened it twice. And that, you know, it's M390, so I've used it a lot. And the second time I sharpened it, first time was to get the edge set the way I wanted it. And the second time I sharpened it was mostly, it just needed me to re-micro bevel it, but because you guys kept picking on me for the thickness of the secondary bevel at the tip, trying to tell me I had it in the machine wrong, or not the machine, but in the clamp wrong on the KME, I went back through and I tried all sorts of things to get that secondary bevel to skinny up. And it did some, but it's still thicker at the tip than it is throughout the rest of the knife. Now, let me explain why that is. This knife has no distal taper in it whatsoever, and the blade is nearly 4 inches long. And it's narrow. You don't have much flat to grab onto with either system whenever you're clamping it in. So, trying to angle it and do all these things, this is the best that I could get it. And the reason that is this flat, like I said, no distal taper. So this flat grind goes straight out. No distal taper whatsoever. And by distal taper, just for an object lesson here, I suppose, you can see that knife, the spine, there's swedges right here and right here. So that spine is the same width all the way down. The only taper you've got is right here. Right there at the tip. If you take a knife like our Manix 2, that knife starts at full stock thickness here and gets narrower and narrower and narrower down both sides until it comes up to the point. And that's what's called a distal taper. That's why the edge on this Manix 2 comes out pretty much even all the way along the edge. So if somebody has a magic formula to make that work, I want you to video it, and I want to see what you've done to fix that in a standard fixed angle sharpening system. I know it can be done by hand, but whenever you do it by hand, you're changing the angle. And that's another issue that I want to talk about with this knife. Because of the short blade and the flat grind and the thickness of the blade, and the blade thickness is 4 millimeter or 0.158, 156. It is not super thin behind the edge. And that, if you sharpen your own knives and you like to have the nice skinny, like this has got a 15-degree secondary bevel and then probably an 18-degree micro bevel. If you like that setup, this is not the knife for you. To sharpen this properly without getting a really wide secondary bevel, I'm at about 20.5 all the way down with no micro bevel. And that's a bit disappointing. I would have liked to have had this knife thinner behind the edge, but it's also a factor of the thinness of the blade this way versus the thickness of the blade this way. So to achieve that, we would have to do like they did on the 704 and go with a thinner blade stock or a full flat grind. I think that one's just full flat grind. I think the blade stock's the same, but the flat grind goes all the way up. And then they would miss out on their fancy swedges and stuff. But just so you're aware, now does it affect the cutting ability of the knife? No. I really thought it was going to. I was really disappointed whenever I first sharpened it, but you know, it's not a super slicer, but we can still make curved cuts and the such at 20.5 with a nice fine, highly refined edge. And that is a 0.5 micron edge on there, 0.1 micron I believe on this one. So I think I did this one, yeah I did this one the second time with the KME. So it's got a 0.1 micron edge. And from here, we'll go to our pause and read card real quick, and I'm going to pull the pivot apart so we can look inside there. Alright, so there are pivot pieces. If you'd like to see how they come apart and go back together, I have a What's Inside the Wii 702 pivot video that you can look up, and I'll try to remember to link down in the description. Hopefully I'll remember to. So look down there, and if I don't link it, somebody send me a nasty gram and I'll get it linked. Anyhow, this is however many months. I have put some oil down in it a couple of times, so it's a little oily, a little icky, but you know, we can wipe it up, get it cleaned up, and you know, it's gonna be just fine. This little collar piece has got quite a bit of ick on it, but overall, for a knife that's been used in the environment it's been used in, it is looking really, really good. As far as mechanicals go, this is it though. This is the pivot. We got ceramic ball bearings riding in front of these washers. Nice, thick, hardened steel washers. And if you want to see exactly how it works, go back to that What's Inside the Wii 702 video. And we also have the lock bar insert or oversert or whatever you want to call this thing right here that has your steel lock bar bit in there. Alright, I'll slap this thing back together and then we'll carry on with the review. Alright guys, so you saw the insides of the knife, and the pivot here, you know, look at that action. It is just beautiful. And we're running on ball bearings, you saw them, and we've got those hardened steel washers backing them up. We've got this lock bar insert of sorts here. This is a piece that if you plan on taking one of these knives apart, don't take that off. I've taken a couple of them off, and I built a special tool to take that off. That is probably the closest fit I have ever seen on a production knife. In fact, it is the closest fit that I've seen on a production knife. So just don't mess with it. And let's get this thing in the pocket and talk about that a bit. In the pocket, this guy, it does have some knife sticking up, but it's got so much knife down in the pocket that it doesn't create that fulcrum effect that you get out of a shorter knife or out of a knife with a shorter pocket clip. And that's a beautiful thing. And one other thing I want you to see is how much this saves, this height of this knife. And we're going to kind of the extremes here, but this is what I was carrying regularly. I'll put it all the way in the back of the pocket, and I'm going to put my index finger there and try to pull this thing out without moving everything around, without my index finger moving. You guys can judge me on how well I do that, but I think I've done all right. Put this one back in, and we've got, what, nearly an inch difference in room in the pocket, and I'll take that any day. That is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, moving on to ergonomics. And you guys guess what I'm going to say here. Yep, you're right. Simple handle design always wins. And we have everything here that I'm looking for. We have a proper sharpening choil on the blade, and it's even a bit of a choke-up choil if you're brave. It actually could be just a little bigger. But we have the flipper tab to keep you from running up on the blade, and then a nice, simple little swelled handle with no major stuff on it. So you get it in your hand, you got a little bit of jimping right here, your thumb falls right into it, and you're in good shape. You go to pinch it, however you're going to do it, and you're still in good shape. You know, you get in your draw cuts, your push cuts, your reverse grips, and your reverse grip, you've got this little shape here that you can get your thumb over, and that is a beautiful thing. Works out really, really good. So ergonomically, this thing is a win all the way around, in my opinion. And I don't think it's really going to matter whether you got big hands or small hands, except that the handle is nearly 5 inches long. So if you got really, really small hands, you know, that could be an issue for you, but you know, I really don't think so, unless just having that excess handle really bothers you. So, my opinions on this knife. It does everything I want it to do well. The good things. We got a nice long blade at nearly 3.9 inches. We've got great ergonomics. We've got a great action. And probably the most innovative and most well done pivot of all of these integral knives. And I just really love that. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And if you watch my video, What's Inside the WE 702, you can see everything that's inside that pivot, how it comes apart and how it goes together. And if you get on WE's Instagram, they have a blow-up drawing of the pivot system. So you can see that there as well. Now, complaints about the knife. One, it is heavy at 5.1 ounces, but at a 3.9 inch blade, that's really not that heavy. The sharpening choil could either be bigger or smaller, one of the two. Bigger to make it a better forward finger choil, or smaller to just make it a sharpening choil. You can see where that flange grind ends. They could shorten it up just a little bit, and either way would be just a slight bit better. The other thing that I'm not sure if I want them to do it, but I think what I would like to see is the same knife built, but instead of having 4mm blade stock, have 3.5 or maybe even 3mm blade stock, so that that flat grind could get a little bit thinner. Now, the other thing that would be nice for the people sharpening like me on a fixed angle sharpening system would be to put a little bit of distal taper in the end of the blade so that we could keep that consistent secondary bevel without resorting to crazy measures. That would be nice. But overall, I like it the way it is. If you decide that you may want one, be aware of what I've talked about. Be aware of the blade grind. Be aware of the weight. And be aware of the cost, of course. And the last thing I want to show you, and I want you to get a good look at this is the finish after several months in a fairly high abrasive environment. We've got some wear here. We've got some wear across here. The WE logo isn't really showing anywhere. We have some wear here on the flat and a little wear on the end. A little bit of wear down the edges. But that is way ahead of most knives that I carry in that environment. As I said in the beginning, I carry this thing because chances of it getting that kind of wear are slim to none. But the WE 702 has stood up extremely well. And is it a knife to buy? Well, as you can tell, I like the knife a lot. And if you're looking for an integral, I really think this is the best done integral for everyday carry that's out there right now. And I don't know about all the integrals. There may be some others I'm unaware of. But of the ones I am aware of, this is the one that I would carry. Because it's nice and thin. It has my hook here to keep me from running my hand up on the blade in case that cardboard box comes out of the alley on my way home at night and I need to shred some cardboard to get home safely. And it's got plenty of blade to do that. And it has just worn extremely well for the type of knife it is and the environment that I've put it in. The M390 has been great. And overall, guys, the WE 702 is just, in my opinion, a fabulous knife. And whenever they come available again, I may end up with another one. End up with one that I'm not using like I am this one, because now that I've used this one like I have, it's going to continue to get used. And, you know, I figure it's still going to be black in a couple of years. You know, it's not as black as it was. It's lightened up a bit. But anyhow, that's my opinion on the WE 702. It is a wonderful knife, and if you have the opportunity to get one, take what I've said into account, but know that, yeah, I think it's a great knife. And you guys have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.